Hello everyone, I'm Anna, and I'll be presenting on Kazuo Ishiguro's 1989 novel, The Remains of the Day. The novel is set in 1956 England, but the narrator, Mr. Stevens, takes a road down memory lane reminiscing about his past experiences in Darlington Hall during the 1920s and 30s. From the very beginning, Stevens is very concerned with the definition of dignity. His idea of greatness takes over his personal life and his professional life. He becomes obsessed with achieving what he perceives as the greatest form of dignity in his career, that he dismisses and ignores anything and anyone that may interfere with his goal. However, this personal definition of dignity is something that is challenged throughout the novel. Although this philosophical dilemma is not something that Stevens is having directly, or not at first anyway, he's posing the question to the reader if this ideal of dignity is something truly worth striving for. He begins by establishing the idea that professional dignity is linked to the place of work, in this case, the stately home of Darlington Hall. Although it's no longer owned by the great Lord Darlington, he reminisces about his life and experiences there. He points out that Mr. Faraday, his new employer, was not someone that he could take too seriously. After Lord Darlington's death, the home was purchased by Mr. Faraday, an easygoing American man who likes to joke around from time to time and engage in some harmless banter that Stevens doesn't know how to handle. Stevens explains, "As you might expect," he says, "I did not take Mr. Faraday's suggestion at all seriously that afternoon, regarding it as just another instance of an American gentleman's unfamiliarity with what was and what was not commonly done in England, subtly suggesting that Darlington Hall is no longer what it used to be, and therefore he is working on regaining that sense of dignity and greatness that he once achieved with Lord Darlington." He even goes as far as saying that even though he spends most of his time inside the house, he has actually seen some of the best of England already. He's taken by surprise when Mr. Faraday suggests taking out the car and going for a drive to explore the countryside. Stevens goes on to explain how England is in fact Great Britain for a reason. It knows it's beautiful, without being flashy, for the lack of a better word. On page 29, he suggests that part of this dignity is rooted on being an Englishman, making him superior to his American employer. He says, in comparison, the sorts of sights offered in such places as Africa or America, though undoubtedly very exciting, would, I'm sure, strike the objective viewer as inferior on account of their unseemly demonstrativeness. Basically saying that places like America and Africa are flashy but can't offer the classiness, dignity, and beauty that only Great Britain can. One of the key scenes where Stevens' idea of dignity is when he's asked by Lord Darlington to dismiss the Jewish girls from their position exclusively on the basis of their religion. Stevens does not question or dispute this attitude towards this unjust act, but follows Lord Darlington's instructions blindly. At this point, we know he has a lot of opinions on a lot of different things, but in this section he fails to give any input as to what he really thinks. Lord Darlington had become sympathetic to the Nazis, he says, and wanted to make sure his German guests would not be offended by the Jewish housemaid's presence. He admits it was a difficult task, but as such, one that demanded to be carried out with dignity. Stevens says he's instinctively opposed to the idea, but not necessarily because it was wrong to do so without cause, but because it meant displaying such personal doubts that would negatively reflect on his service and his own dignity. This act was completed with his usual emotional dryness, but it was Miss Kenton who acted as a direct foil to display a moral compass that Stevens seems to be lacking. Miss Kenton directly threatened Stevens with leaving if he did not say something to prevent their dismissal. She argued that there was no reason to dismiss them, for they had been excellent employees and their religion was not enough cause to end their employment. However, Stevens simply responded by saying that she was in no position to be passing judgments of such high and mighty nature. Even though they're both employees, and realistically, yes, neither one was probably in a position to prevent something from like that from happening. It was only Miss Kenton who was afflicted by this behavior, while Stevens did not seem to care at all. His judgment was solely based on his ability to perform the task in such a manner that it would be satisfactory to those who he perceived had the authority to judge. It was not until Lord Darlington himself admits to being wrong that Stevens is questioning his response to the situation. Lord Darlington even tries to fix his perceived message by asking Stevens to try to contact the ladies and even offers some compensation. Both Miss Kenton and Lord Darlington offer a form of human decency and respect to those girls that Stevens did not. His concern with dignity does not seem to equate human decency or even respect to the girls, despite his appreciation for a job well done in his field. Stephen's willingness to follow orders without ever questioning and always trying to defend his and Lord Darlington's views raises the question of respectability, ethics, and autonomy, especially in the workplace. Miss Kenton is one of the first to call him out on his ideas of right and wrong, but he mocks her for not leaving. His emotional disconnection leads me to another important moment where Stephen seems to focus on the wrong things: his father's death. There are several moments in the novel where Stevens fails to show any type of emotional connection, and his father's death is one where I thought he was stone cold disconnected and failed to offer his father a moment of dignity. Again, he is focused on the crisis that's going on in the house and the guests, and left his father to die with a stranger instead of spending the last few minutes with him. It was clear that his father was not doing well, and despite his own stubbornness to continue working, in his final moments, Stevens fails to recognize how important this moment is. His father, being a no-nonsense kind of man himself, after falling ill, he wanted to reconcile with his son, but Stevens ignored these moments to focus on returning to the kitchen to refill a drink station. His father says, "I hope I've been a good father to you. I'm proud of you. A good son. I hope I've been a good father to you. I suppose I haven't." To which all Stevens can say is, "I'm afraid we're extremely busy now, but we can talk again in the morning, and I'm glad you're feeling better now." Finally, when his father passes away, he again seems dismissive and incapable of expressing any kind of emotion. When he goes upstairs to see him, he's thinking of the smell of fat and roast cooking from Miss Mortimer's apron. Both her and Miss Kenton offer the sadness that one would expect from him, but again, he just wants to return to work. Although the rest of the scene recognizes that some of the guests notice something not being quite right with Stevens, his emotional denial and disconnection is less understandable than an employee with an emergency such as this, taking a few hours to spend with his father on his deathbed. He justifies his behavior after the fact by saying, "I know my father would have wished me to carry on just now." He again just focuses on work and embodies his idea of dignity and thinks of that night as triumphant despite his father's death. Ironically, while this is happening behind the scenes, the guests are toasting to professionalism despite the blunt argument they're having while toasting and roasting each other. Other characters that challenge this idea of dignity is Harry Smith. When he shows up in the small town of Little Compton, he is thought of as a gentleman by the residents and is treated with extended kindness because they believe Stevens to be of a higher social status. Despite their special treatment, Stevens does not offer them the same honesty and even kindness they offer him, and never clarifies that he's just a butler. Instead, he brags a bit about having met Churchill. He says, "It's been my good fortune, after all, to have consorted not just with Mr. Churchill, but with many other great leaders and men of influence," as if he had been in the room discussing foreign affairs behind closed doors too. Being a gentleman and dignity become synonyms, but it does not equate honesty or integrity. They explain that being a gentleman is not something necessarily achievable with money, but instead say that it's something that's visible, unexplainable, and not attainable, like beauty. But why not clarify the situation? He says, "I do not see any real harm being done. Any real harm has been done. I will, after all, take my leave of these people in the morning and presumably never encounter them again." Acknowledging that it was a lie, but finding it not worthy of his time to clarify anything, even though he admitted that these people gave him a place to stay, a dinner, and treated him kindly. He was more concerned with Harry Smith's discussion of dignity. Harry argues that people need to accept the responsibility to vote and express their own opinions to maintain democracy that others have died for. But Stevens is dismissive and says, His statements were surely far too idealistic, far too theoretical to deserve respect, pointing out that how can ordinary people truly be expected to have strong opinions on all manner of things? There is, after all, a limit to how much ordinary people can learn and know. In this section, not only is he forgetting his own social status, but being dismissive and arrogant and assuming ordinary people could not possibly understand the complexity of world affairs, and therefore to him, incapable of understanding the meaning of dignity. He takes Harry for a comic figure. It is Dr. Carlyle that calls him out and gets him to admit that he's a butler. He mentions that when he first arrived in the small town, he thought socialism would allow people to live with dignity, but doesn't explain why he seems to have changed his mind. It's clear that Dr. Carlyle does not see eye to eye with Stevens, but also doesn't take the chance for clarification. There are other instances as well, like when Mr. Cardinal shows up unexpected, that he's too questioning Stevens on his lack of curiosity of what is really going on in the house, given the historical context and importance of the events during World War II, and why Stevens' adoption of Lord Darlington's values and beliefs become problematic and display his lack of personal integrity. And that's on page 222. In the end, Stevens does not offer a clear definition of what he tries so hard to embody. He instead offers experiences and anecdotes of what he thinks it isn't. His unreliable narration, I think, adds to the conflict of his ideas of dignity in retrospect, and now seems to be full of regrets. He gets stuck on this one definition of dignity and the philosophical dilemma of whether it's absolute and if it can only mean one thing. The memories of the past and the roads not taken haunt him at the end of his day.